Hi guys, Mike Langford here, Toronto Fire Services. I've been on for 29 years and captain of a ladder truck downtown. I like to call it ladder because it pisses a lot of people off. So anyway, it is a ladder truck. I'm also the president of Hogtown Fools, and I'm an instructor with Fire Services as well. I'll go through the panel. The panel tonight will be Mark Vanderfeist, Rob Wiggins, Vince Adino, Lionel Crowther, and Matt Worley. I think we'll start off with that, okay? So if you guys want to introduce yourselves, starting with Mark Vanderfeist.
Sure, thanks, Mike, and welcome everybody to our continuing edition of our panel discussions here at Hogtown Fools. We're going to name this, hopefully, if we can, the Fast Attack Roundtable Discussion, because our aim is to try and pick a topic and then with some certain points kind of fast attack discuss the particular topic as a way to try and evolve our learning through these tough times. So welcome back again for those who are dialing in to watch this, and we hope this will be a benefit to you, and hopefully this will spur some conversation for you guys back at the station around the kitchen table, back in your own departments. As Mike mentioned, my name is Mark Vanderfeist. 21 years total service time, both in the U.S. and Canada. I work for a small department in southwestern Ontario, but I am the president of Firestar Services and enjoy work with many guys on this panel here on a daily basis.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll pass it off to Matt Worley next.
Thanks, Mark. My name's Matt Worley. With a career fire department in southwestern Ontario. Been in the fire service for about 20 years. I've seen everything from the volunteer side, a little bit of military as a civilian instructor at Borden, and then I went to the career side. So thanks for inviting me, Mike. Let's just generate some discussion here, get some good talk started. That's our whole goal.
Hi, Matt back here. 10 plus years in the fire service. Work for a medium-sized department in the GTA. Treasurer of Hogtown Fools. And an instructor of Firestar Services. Just happy to be here again and learn a lot from a lot of different people as well.
Hey guys, Rob, 13 years in fire service, medium-sized department north of the city, formerly down in the Golden Horseshoe area. Happy to be here. Hogtown Fools and member of Firestar Services. So love these guys.
Hey guys, I'm Vince Adino, Toronto Fire, 23 years. I'm happy to be invited to this talk. Thanks.
Thanks, Vince. Lionel, brothers?
Lionel Crowther with Winnipeg Fire, been with Winnipeg 22 years. And no, thanks for the opportunity to be part of this discussion.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, so just so that everybody's aware of what happened here, again, we had, due to COVID, we've had some situations where we've had to go through Zoom meetings. We originally had the Canadian High Rise Conference that was slated for early May, and we were going to have, well, the standpipe part of that was part of our first go at Zoom meetings or Zoom webinars. And now we're going to talk on another part that was supposed to be at the Canadian High Rise Conference, was the RIT part of it and shelter in place. And Brent Brooks, once he gets on, can talk a bit more about that. And also, we're supposed to present in FDIC Atlantic this weekend, and it was going to be on RIT versus initial interior crew firefighter rescue. And because we practice a lot, and you know what, we're really good, and I like the fact that we practice the RIT component of it, but due to limited training facilities, limited opportunities for training, we don't seem to practice what will happen when it, let's say, that bell goes off inside, all right, or something catastrophic happens. So I want to talk a bit about that and see where we all are, at least in Ontario, and then Lionel, he can talk to what's going on in Winnipeg, all right? I appreciate that. Okay, so Mark, if you want to talk a bit about how we're going to go.
Hey, sure. Thanks, Mike. So the topic is RIT, rapid intervention teams. Nothing new for our people here today that we're talking about RIT, but in the general realm of history, it's been a new topic to the country of Canada for the last maybe 15, 20 years. It did begin in the US originally, and we can look at many big cities like New York and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, Ohio, or in Columbus, Ohio, where we have had incidents of firefighters in the line of duty dying because they were not able to be rescued or could not get out. And because of that, there were many techniques and tactics developed in the RIT realm to address those particular concerns. So for example, the Denver drill from the incident down in Denver, the John Nance drill, which took place there in Ohio, I believe, and others like that were kind of developed. The Pittsburgh drill, developed by Jim Crawford from the city of Pittsburgh because of his ordeal with the Bryson Street fire. And RIT initially, when it was rolled out in terms of the concept and the training along with the operational concept, RIT was looked at as a separate entity that was established on the fire ground. And the whole premise was that when there's a need for firefighter rescue, that specialized team would then be deployed and would go in and would initiate and do the actual rescue. And that was the initial implementation plan. And it's been that way for the last number of years. I would say at least 20, if not more. But as we'll discuss tonight, hopefully, there's been an evolving change in how RIT is actually implemented when it's been used. And a lot of the rescues of firefighters who have either fallen through holes in the floor through the basement or been caught in a flashover or got lost, disorientated, and who were actually grabbed and rescued, we can see from those numbers of those incidents how they are rescued by the interior crews or members that are working already inside, as opposed to the actual RIT team being deployed and going in. And we're going to use a lot of numbers and some data that's been gathered by Project Mayday that was done by Don Abbott down there in Arizona. And he's done a very good job in terms of gathering information, stats gathered based on actual calls and incidents that paint for us a good picture that we can glean from for ourselves, no matter if we're working for Toronto, the Londons, the Windsors, the Bramptons, small cities, small volunteer departments, that we can use that information and say, okay, how's this going to apply to us? And for the most part, what we're going to find is a lot of our rescues that we're going to be initiating and taking part in will be done by the inside crew members. Usually the first inside or second inside crew going in, but those that are right there in the immediate area who will be effective and efficient in carrying out that rescue, as opposed to having a Mayday being declared and then going through the actual action steps of deploying the RIT team in who is standing by on the outside. That only counts for a very small percentage of actual RIT rescues compared to the vast majority that are done by the inside crew. So let's start diving into the first point. And I think the first point we should look at is more so of where do we go wrong within, or as far as the need for a rescue. So let's go around the panel and start discussing where do we go wrong.
Okay, well, I'll start off with that. What I found, and through I use NIOSH reports for a lot of my teaching and learning. And when you go through the NIOSH reports or anything that is related to Toronto even, it starts off with something small, and then something small, and something small, and something small, compounding, and then we end up with a catastrophic incident. And it's always seems to be the way. Looks like a bread and butter fire. Next thing you know, you get off the line, or you go for I just go into that room over there, and next thing you cut off, and that's that. So that's how one way it goes wrong. Anybody else? So I'll go to the next panelist, and you can interject.
For me, that's exactly what went wrong. My captain needed the line out in the hallway. I passed it off to him, and instead of going with him, I continued to search when I should have actually gone with them. I never thought I was in trouble, until I was actually burning. I never thought I was in trouble. I never thought about calling a Mayday for myself. So that's a big, I would say, a big problem.
And very good, Vince. It seems to be something that if I'm in trouble, I know that I can get myself out. That's always been kind of drilled. But since we started the RIT program in Toronto and other places that I've participated in RIT, it has been instilled that we try to call that Mayday as soon as we can. And in your situation, Vince, it worked out. You did get hurt, but you got out. All right, and that's the phenomenal part about it. And things kind of just came together, and we made it work, which was fantastic. The crews that helped you out, and yourself too. You got yourself to a window, and away you go.
Yeah.
So those are things that we instill with helping yourself out. I want to make sure that I stress. Anytime we talk RIT, we always stress that 75% of our efforts are always put into preventing. All right, so that situational awareness, doing it 360, being aware of the smoke conditions, any kind of hazards. So those are the things. 75% of our good firefighting tactics should be at prevention, and then this part, which is very important, like a RIT program, or teaching crews, which I hope one day we get better at, teaching crews on how to react to a firefighter that's down inside. And there are certain parameters, and we'll talk about that later, but that 25% to get ourselves out. And I think it's imperative that we follow that program, and we'll keep on that. Okay. Lionel, if you want to talk.
Yeah, you bet. It was a good point, like especially from Vince there, that having that situation awareness. And in our case, our incident, everybody was doing their normal tasks, like that bread and butter fire. And fortunately, the incident commander had the situation awareness of the conditions that were changing rapidly, and put in that evacuation for us to evacuate. But the biggest thing I see from what I personally learned from all of this since our incident is that we didn't have a plan for self-survival, but we did have RIT. We did all these amazing programs in place, but we didn't have that situational awareness of self-survival, because the mindset's totally different. Because when I'm going in as RIT, I'm going in, I have a task, I know my plan, I know my position. But getting thrown into a self-survival situation of losing your orientation or getting off the line, or an event happening like we had a fire event, we didn't have that playbook in place. And that's the biggest thing I see with this great movement of self-survival training, that you get a playbook, you get put into a situation where you are challenged, lost, trapped, whatever it is, and you get that success, that feeling of that benchmark. And we didn't have that. Like, we did RIT like crazy before this happened, and I felt very confident in my team. But when I was cast in and set aside, and when I got knocked back, I was on my own. So it's a very different mindset. So it's a great to see this discussion.
Very good. We'll go to one of the medium departments. Robbie Wiggins, what's going on up in your area?
Same as pretty much everyone else. We're working on self-rescue, activating that early Mayday and not being ashamed of it. Whether it might seem to be minor, it can escalate quickly. So recognizing it, calling it early, and not being ashamed. So many, I'm sure we all have it, where nobody wants to make that call until it's, oh my God, here we are, and now I'm in real trouble. So we had a fire, not where I am, but where I currently was, where there was a Mayday called, and it was a disoriented crew. It was minor. They ended up, the second hose line crew located the initial person, problem solved, nice and easy package on it. So it's just kind of that, sticking with the preemptive and not being afraid to make that call. And the survival trailer practicing self-rescue is huge. So that's been great to see.
Matt?
I think one of our biggest problems, Mike, is that when we train for RIT, we train for like the huge things that happen, right? We train for the catastrophic fire events and the collapses, but we're not training RIT for the little stuff, for the, I lost the rest of my crew, or I just hit yellow on my bottle. And I think that's where we're kind of losing the mark. Like Rob said, we should be getting better at the smaller Maydays, right? I'm not discounting a Mayday for being a Mayday, but we should be more comfortable with calling the smaller Maydays. It's something that we've been working on. The department I'm on, the training division there, has really been driving into us. Here's the smaller issues that are still Maydays, but we're not treating them as Maydays. We're just dismissing them as everyday events where they're not, right? They're Maydays and we need to train for it. We need to get things rolling on the little things. So when the big things happen, it falls into place a little easier.
Yeah, and to bring that back online, we're talking about where do we go wrong, and I think we're getting better at learning fire behavior, and that's a big step for most of us in the fire service. It's taken a long time to get a fire behavior program out there, especially with the catastrophic events that we're dealing with and the fuel loads we're dealing with, and compartmentalization isn't as big as, or isn't a deal anymore. We've got wide open spaces. So that's one way where we're getting better, but we were getting wrong, and we still kind of do, I guess. And anybody else want to talk on where else we're getting?
Yeah, let me chime in here for a second, Mike. Where do we go wrong? Let's look at the basics, because I think you mentioned, Mike, that small steps compound together and make a bigger problem. And that always falls back to the basics. And let's use some information from that Project Mayday report. Something as simple as a 360, part of your size up. Size up is your basic component for every person to take part in when they arrive on the actual fire grounds, not just designated to the officer, but for every person to be participating in and be visually observant and to be aware of what's going on and to report to other people what they've seen, what they see, and so on. So doing a size up is going to be part of the, I guess, important step to be aware of your surroundings and to be preventative, as you mentioned there, Mike, with prevention being the key here. And we're looking at the Project Mayday stuff, when the questions were asked of those who were rescued from a RIT situation, was a 360 complete? And the answer was, for most of the time, percentage-wise, up to 60% of the time, it was not done. And when the 360 was done, 25% of the time, it then landed into more information, such as when doing the 360, they're actually able to confirm the size almost 100% of the time. They were able to identify life safety issues about 90% of the time, able to identify hazards almost 100% of the time. Smoke and fire from the location identified 45% of the time. So by doing that 360, they're able to grab information from the scene to help them make a good decision as far as their tactics or operations and so on and so forth at that point in time. So going back to the basics, where do we go wrong? It starts in that first arriving crew that gets on scene with 2 people, 3 or 4, doing the basics such as your size up, your good radio reports, establishing command, doing a 360 if possible, all the way around. If not, get maybe half it done. But those observant clues being completed, and when it's done, that being communicated to the rest of the incoming crews and so on, that they're made aware of what we're doing. What's our tactical objective here? Are we going on defensive operation, offense? Are we going to do special tactics such as, I don't know, transitional fire attack, something like that? But at any rate, it's being communicated based on the basics, a 360.
Very good. And anybody want to carry on with that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, it's great, great points, Mark. We've been fortunate to be able to do a lot of work with Don Abbott, and some of those great points were, he found we're doing all these, like over 5,500 incidents. The majority of the incidents went sideways because of the command presence that wasn't there. You know, the command didn't orient or wasn't able to control the scene, lost communications, got tunnel vision, all these different things. So like all these things about the basics are not just for the frontline staff, for the suppression staff. It's about how are we commanding these incidents. We're so good at when everything goes well, but if you simply lose one little thing like water supply, the domino effect starts to start, right? And all these things that Don is so amazing that he was able to capture all these things. But how can we use them? How are you going to make them practical enough for your crews to have a drill session, not just reading the PowerPoint? You know, how do you put this into play and make it like all these things that he's found can apply to every one of our operating guidelines. There's nothing in what he's done that can't be applied. So that's why I love this discussion. And thanks, Mark, for bringing up those things about the basics, because that's where the incidents are going sideways. Like simple little things, not these big, massive failures that happen on scene. It's all these little things that end up catching up to each other. And then once they start rolling, we're not turning them off.
Very good. Matt Baca, do you have any comment?
No, I think everybody hit it. I agree with Vince a lot there. If you look, that's where we go wrong a lot, is that whole stigmatism of we don't want to call it soon enough. And Mark brought up a good point with the 360 and the fire dynamics. And another thing to consider is, like, new guys get on is the gear, right? We tend to push in a lot farther now with the gear that we have, where we're not feeling the heat, we're not feeling the temperatures, and put ourselves in those situations where it's almost too late by the time we realize it.
Very good. Robbie Wiggins?
Yeah, no, great point about the heat and the gear, Matt, especially if we're training on Class B props or, God forbid, digital. So that's a huge one. That's why I really like what's been going on with, we've been doing a Firestar, getting the heat, actually getting the fire dynamics and showing it. One other thing is just even something as simple as when that first due truck is coming, catching that Delta side, Alpha side, Bravo side, there's 3/4 of your 360 done if your first due apparatus is staged properly. And then keeping ladders and everything constant fluid. I hate seeing, and it was, you know, pretty prevalent where I was a volley officer, was we were limited on manpower. We'd throw a couple guys on RIT and they'd be yard ornaments. And it's got to be a fluid, constant, dynamic scene for those guys, constantly assessing the situation. Thanks.
Good. Just a couple of points on, again, where do we go wrong? I've got a couple of bullets here. Well, definitely the 360, understanding what's going on with the fire. Smoke conditions, we don't do it very well. We should get Dodson up here or his equal and do a lot more on reading the smoke conditions. But the one thing that Mark mentioned with the 360, and I see a lot of NIOSH reports that say that even with the 360 communications, all right, we didn't do communications very well. And so they've gone and done the 360, come around, and the next thing you know, and I'll talk on that a little bit too later. Vince, what do you think about that part of it?
I'm not sure if that would have helped me in my case, because when we initially got there, it looked like, I thought it was venting from the front of the building. I didn't expect it to be that hot when I got to the second floor. Like, it was roasting as soon as I got up there. So I don't know if the 360 would have, we did see the Alpha and the Delta and the Charlie side pulling up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we definitely need to do it. But I'm not sure if in my instance if it would have made a difference.
Okay, very good. It's to me, again, what's happening in the fire service is we aren't getting, we are, right now we seem real busy in Toronto, but we're going through a phase of not having them as regularly as possible. So when we do arrive, and we're not doing the training, so when we arrive, all of a sudden we're not that calm. We get into a panic, just say. And our blinders go like this, all right? And our focus, because again, we want to put out that fire. We've got to start, well, that's another point that we'll talk about is training, is getting ourselves. Yeah. Anyhow, we want to get training and also get our focus back and get our 360s completed. And that way we can get a better sense of what's going on with the fire. And our tactics then will be that, all right? And understanding how we're going to do the tactics part of it. Okay, so those are things that are, okay. And the weapons, I've got written down, choice of weapons. We've got a big push in Toronto now of adopting or using the bigger lines, all right? We're not, and we talked about it earlier with the standpipe. We're not using 2.5 charged to 13,000 kPa anymore or whatever. We're using it appropriately, and we're being able to move it easier. So if you have, my theory is if I got more than a third of the house going, I'm going 2.5 if I can, because I'm going to need that water. There's so much fuel load. I got to start thinking about it. That's not rock solid, but that's just a little bit of my thing that I use. Anybody else on that?
Yeah, let's go with that there, Mike. So along with weapon selection, what does the weapon do for us? Well, the weapon applies water, delivers water, and gives that, hopefully, that one-time knockout punt to take care of the fire for us. So where do we go wrong? And this is not saying that we are all at fault for this, but where we as a service sometimes steer off in the wrong direction is not getting water on that fire ASAP. So the goal of any engine company or quint company or truck company or first arriving truck on scene there should be to get the water that's on board or from the source and get it on that fire as soon as they possibly can, because as fast as that happens with getting water in the fire, the problem goes away, right? You look at the stats from Project Mayday, okay? So people who required rescue from RIT, what were they got lost. They fell through a hole in the basement. They got caught in the flashover. They may have got injured. So out of those 4 right there, okay, getting lost, okay, that require water on the fire real quick, sure, alleviates your visibility problem, takes away the heat and the actual danger of the risk of the fire itself. But more importantly, the falling through a floor in the basement or the third one there, that's going to involve getting water quickly to take care of the problem. Why is the basement failing, or the floor between the basement and the first floor failing? Because of the intense heat. Okay, of course, factor in lightweight construction, the glues and the adhesives melting down, but they're melting down because of the intense heat from the actual fire. So getting water on that fire as soon as you possibly can with our weapon selection, be it an 1.75" or 1.5" for the dinosaur departments or the 2" and 2.5" for the progressive departments that are looking at getting big water on that fire quickly, is going to help eliminate the need for a RIT rescue, I believe, for the majority of the time. Not all, but the majority, because we took care of the problem. We took care of the fire. Knock it out, remove it, and that one domino is removed from the lineup of the rest being fallen down, going towards that bad outcome.
Very good. Lionel?
Yes, like as here in Winnipeg, we're really trying to move forward with these new advancements, and especially with that 2.5" attack, using that now with our high rise, and really looking at how RIT is supposed to be or effectively deployed. I'll let Jeff Wessel bring it up in a bit, but is it better to be doing this outside in or inside out? Recently, we've looked at sending 2 in. It's just in training right now, and they're looking at it, sending 2 in to do reconnaissance while 2 sit outside with gear. I honestly am not a fan of it. You know, it just doesn't make sense to in my years that I've had experience. But the fact that we are looking toward advancing is encouraging here, because we are doing the Ottawa Fire Dynamics program, starting it right away. So that's what I see. I think it's something that we need to move forward on, and at least we're looking at. We know we have to change. We know we have to do better, and it's encouraging for us here in Winnipeg.
Very good. And you bring up a good point about interior or exterior water. We're proponents of if the fire is self-venting and we have the opportunity to reset it, then we're going to reset it. That comes right down to getting water on that fire as soon as I can, and then it's still an attack. All right, we call it transitional attack or resetting the fire, and I think it's a very good technique when it presents itself, but only when it presents itself. We still believe in getting into a vent-limited fire and still attacking it that way. And then that way we will take care of the problems, and hopefully we don't have a RIT situation.
Yeah, Mike, and sorry, Mike, even something that we really changed within our command procedures here is it is offensive. It's not a marginal. We got rid of all those things now, and it's either offensive or defensive. If we're moving towards the inside, like putting water from the outside, Winnipeg's decided not to call it transitional. This is an offensive strategy, hitting it from the outside, exterior, or from the exterior, and moving towards the interior. So it's really good to see us moving that way.
That's a good point. Yeah, taking away the negative side of it, where we've had that fight that's galvanized the fire service. And anyhow, so we've talked about what things can go wrong. So the original discussion we were going to have is on Mark. I'll let you carry it on.
Sure, yeah. Let's go to our second point, which is how and when do we initiate the RIT rescue in terms of using an official RIT team or the interior crews that are working right there in the immediate area. And this, of course, I think will open up a bit more exploration of our discussion here, but let's dive in right to the controversial deep end of this, shall we? The word freelancing is a forbidden word to be used in the fire ground. We're not supposed to freelance at all because freelancing leads to bad things. But on the flip side, freelancing can also lead to good things, because when one of us notices something that needs to be addressed right away and we address it, we remove the problem, as opposed to observing it and then calling command, and the time it takes to call command, get permission to do it and actually do it, it may actually create a bigger problem. So sometimes our freelancing in terms of on the fire ground, looking at something, seeing something, stopping something right away from becoming worse actually is a good thing. And in the case of RIT, when there is a Mayday being called from inside and we have an interior crew working right there in the immediate area or close by, and they hear that Mayday call taking place, are they going to wait for command to initiate them to be the actual RIT team? Perhaps they might freelance and hear that Mayday call and say, yeah, I know exactly where that is. It's just next door down or a few feet from where we are, or floor below or floor above. And they may go there and take care of the problem right away, correct it, then call command, say, command, Mayday down, we found firefighter so-and-so, and we're going to get him out of the building, so on. But that sort of freelance model, if I can call it that way, may have actually been a benefit and a bonus. So we use that word sometimes as a negative way, and we always look down upon it, that never, ever freelance ever in the fire ground. That does hold true to a certain degree, but sometimes in the RIT world, when someone's needing help right away, when one of us needs help right away, instead of waiting for the RIT team to be deployed and then making their way in to where we are, and then when they get in, they got to do the assessment and everything else at that point, that may take who knows how many minutes of time that we don't have. But the immediate people working right there in the area who can actually be effective quickly, they may be the answer. And so by letting them make that judgment call right then and there, doing that snatch and grab and getting the person out, may be what's needed in the long run as far as how, when to initiate.
Anybody else want to discuss that?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Can I chime in as a white hat here?
Okay, Chief.
As a chief officer on this discussion here tonight, I would absolutely expect the next closest crew to initiate a rescue without even having to be asked. And that would be expected as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I'm going to want to speak up on this one. I'm not going to really agree with that. What I want, and what as a chief officer, Chief, I'd like to have some kind of an idea that task that crew is in there was supposed to be doing is going to be dropped. Because as we teach fire behavior, the fire can, it can take off exponentially depending on the fuel load and stuff like that. So I'd like to just qualify it a bit more and say that, yeah, I'd still like a little communications to the, and it's a no-brainer if they're right there and I can make the grab right on the radio right away and say, listen, I can hear them. They're right here. And then that way they can backfill another crew to take over my task, because my task isn't being completed. As soon as I leave that, then I'm going to be, and we all know it's the first 10 minutes that generally these things happen. And we're still in the thick of the fire and all that kind of stuff, or whatever's going on. You guys, that's my feeling on it, and that's how I like to teach it, is that anybody inside you have the right to do it, but I'd still like to have you communicate that that's what you're doing. So I have an idea and backing up the crews that are inside.
I agree with what you just said, Mike, 100%. As long as command knows what's going on, my feeling is you're good to go.
You don't want me saying I got it, all right?
Yeah, we won't get into that right now tonight. Okay?
Okay. Anyhow.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. I agree, Mike. That's with your point there. That's a huge thing. If you're tactically deployed to be fire tac, you're solving a problem. And if you leave that your tactic or you get that task, what's happening to the rest of the scene? You know, and having that backup is supposed to be backing them up, so they should have a condition recognition or situation awareness of what's going on with them. So having them backed up right away, and then it's like what we've been trying to do as well here, and in some other areas of the country is using that backup, and you can tactically deploy them right within the vicinity of your fire tech or wherever your Mayday is, and then it's easier to back up that backup. You know, but these are all these things that why we train. And the chief, what's your point too? Having communication is the reason things are successful or unsuccessful majority of the time on the fire ground. So saying, chief, we are tactically deploying, we have a firefighter down in this or part of the building, and then we are tactically deployed. So we have that training ability, because if we haven't done it, and I'm sending a crew that's interior attack and never done RIT without their RIT tools, am I going to make the situation better or worse?
Rob Wiggins, right front and center.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Great point Lionel just brought up. Is that crew trained on that, or is this the first time they've ever tried to perform a rescue without the RIT bag and their bag of tricks and their tagline? What's that going to look like? And then the only other thing, I'll piggyback on Mark's point. There's a great instructor in the States who calls freelancing in the regards of what you're talking about, Mark, just aggressive interior firefighting with situational awareness, and then making sure everybody understands what took place and updating command on what they did. Thanks.
Let's look at the numbers there, Mike and gang.
Yep, we got them.
From Project Mayday. The majority of RIT rescues conducted were 68% of the time from interior crews when there was a Mayday declared. And looking into it deeper, the time frame, Mike, you mentioned the time for about 10 minutes is, I know, when we get in trouble. The majority of Maydays called and RIT rescues required was in that 15 to 20 minute time frame on scene. So we look at that time frame coupled with what's happening to the building. The building's breaking down, falling apart, and we're getting further deeper in. We should, by that time, again, look at the numbers from Project Mayday. There's a lot more people on scene by that 15, 20 minute mark. So the manpower's there. And the manpower will be, of course, for the most part, some inside, some outside. But we have the manpower in the inside to affect those rescues, which is why I think it counts for a high number, as Don Abbott's gathered, of almost 70% of the time that interior crews are actually doing the actual rescues, as opposed to the formal RIT team being deployed to come in, which only accounts for, I think, maybe 10% of the time, and that's it. Not very high, but a very low number actually in the grand scheme of things. So the numbers speak for themselves. It's the interior crews, those who are there, right there in the spot, right there on the scene, who can effectively act quickly and efficiently.
Can I chime in? In my situation, obviously, I didn't put in a Mayday, and it was basically too late. I was already burning. There's no way the crew, the RIT, out on the, like, I agree with you guys about performing your task that you're assigned, but I would have loved for someone to grab me that wasn't assigned and pull me out. There wasn't enough time. So, like, from what I've learned from this, my incident is, when I'm assigned RIT, I want face masks, face pieces on. You need to, it's a sprint. Like, nobody wants to be RIT on the fire scene, but it's pretty serious. And I think it's, you have to be prepared to go. Like, I mean, go, like, because seconds count. Because if there's someone like me who doesn't call a Mayday, it's already too late. You need to get in there as quickly as possible.
Can you explain how you got out, Vince? Can you elaborate on how you got out of that?
I believe I went past the room that was on fire, and I didn't realize it until it burnt through the door. So that room was fully involved. I thought that was my way to the stairs to get out. So anyway, the shit hit the fan. I was now burning, and I heard the aerial crew break the window, and I had already searched, so I felt the window before. So I figured, okay, I have help. So I didn't beeline. I was on my stomach because it was so hot.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the window, and when I initially searched it, I thought that there was a bookcase or something in front of the window, because I could feel the window and something in front of it, and then like past the window, like behind whatever was in front of it. So it was too hot for me to get up to, like, I figured to pull it down. So I figured the guys outside would push it over so I can get out. Anyway, it ended up being a wall built to the window. And yeah, I got myself as far as I could go, and the guys on the aerial pulled me out, and they put in the Mayday.
And very good. Third-party Maydays are real deal situation. Anyway, thank you, Vince. It was an eye opener for all of us, and the fact that the ladder crew got the ladder up, proud moment for us ladder guys getting those ladders up. It's so important. Even if it's a basement fire, fellas and ladies, put ladders up. All right, they're there for egress. Okay, so the fact that they got that aerial up there was fantastic. Lionel, can you talk a bit about your situation?
Sure. On ours, regular two-story attached garage. Fire was in the garage. We went in, we were third on scene, so we were tasked back then in 2007. We would have assignments just by your alignment, how you showed up on scene. So they had fire attack going on already on the garage. But like we've been talking, like early water, the guys, instead of putting that hose line on, they decided to try to cut down the garage door to get access. The crews went interior to check for extension, went right to the second floor to look and see if it extended up in the room above the garage. We went up as third in and checking for primary to do a quick primary on the second floor, but no sweep was done on the main floor prior to everyone going to the second. We found out later that the garage door, the man door at the very back of the garage, was cracked open. It never did close when the kids found that they had a working garage, or the garage was on fire, ran out the front door. So everything was happening, normal tasks. Then we saw that smoke change inside. The incident commander put out that he saw the smoke change as soon as that big garage door came down. The wind was coming from that direction as well, from the northeast, right directly in, caused the door to fail at the back. And one of the members on the second floor on its extension line, looking for extension, broke a window and asked for positive pressure, changing how the house was sealed. And this wasn't a normal practice, like breaking a window before, all those things. But this was one of the things that happened, changed the dynamics of the home, caused that flow path to establish. And within 30 seconds from that evacuation call, when he saw that change in smoke out front, it blew up to us on the second floor, right to that window, causing it to flash on the second floor. That trapped the whole crews on the top, on the second floor. 4 of us were now trapped. And the one member, Eddie, he was on the stairwell when it happened, right in that chimney, hit him directly, knocked him down. He was semi-conscious, in and out of consciousness. One captain was right by the window, by that vent, and it went right through Tom Nichols, instantly burning through his throat region, caused him to asphyxiate. I was over on the other side of the house with my partner. We got separated when things came up and lit up on us. He went out the alpha side on the second floor window, was able to get out that side. But I ended up in the hallway, and I found Captain Lassard, Harold Lassard. I was able to get him to the Charlie side to a window. And when I broke out that window, the only thing, we didn't practice isolating, like closing those doors. the simple tasks that we do now. But when I broke that window, I created another vent exit, right? And the wind coming from the other window that Scott, the other member on the front side, broke, it vented through us on that Charlie side window. So it was pretty bad for us in that point, where I wasn't able to get Captain Lassard out. Wasn't able to fit him through the opening that I made. He moved aside, and I dove through, landed down on the ground there, where crews were trying to get a ladder up to us in time. They then got the ladder up and were able to pull Captain Lassard out, but he got stuck on his SCBA, so the members had to put him back in, take off his pack, and then put him back out that window and carrying him down. But unfortunately, Harold, when he hit the ground, he stopped breathing. So unfortunately, lost our 2 captains there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tough goal. Appreciate you describing that. I know it's a tough goal, and but like I say to everything, this is all learning. And NIOSH reports, there's never blame. It's all learning material, and I expect everybody to read them, because it's I learned a lot about from your case, and unfortunately, maybe that's something that we have to get, and I've always heard discussion on it, is that we need a database here. We need a NIOSH up here. And if we can get a NIOSH up here, then we can hopefully learn, all right, and get better at what we can, all right. Jeff Boiseau wants to speak. Jeff, go ahead.
Hey, Mike. So yeah, just a couple of comments. First about the firefighter rescue versus RIT. I have no disagreement that an interior crew is considerably faster because they're close by. There's absolutely no agreement, and that is part of our program, is to cover that, and it's going to be part of the IFF program also. That's going to be one of the elements. But one of the big differences between RIT and firefighter rescue is going to be equipment also, right? The interior crews only has what they have with them. That's it, right? I can't supply extra air. I can't supply anything else. No extra equipment, nothing. So can the interior crew start? Possibly, yeah. At least by locating them is probably half the battle right there, locating the downed firefighter, and the other half would be then the RIT team coming in to get them if that's necessary. If not, the other team, if they can take them out, absolutely. But if they can't, they need more equipment, more air. If he's trapped, we still have to have that access. You know, Mike, I see the RIT kit behind you. Absolutely, right? That's going to save someone's life, right? Does it happen often? Not at all. But boy, when it does, it's a pretty crucial part.
And to be honest, we practice it a lot, and I really think we're pretty good at it where we are.
Yes, and we're trying to teach our incident commanders to utilize them, interior crews, but also having, you know, if you go back to the Phoenix drills where they're talking 2.5 minutes to get a RIT team in the front door, that's 2.5 minutes you could be at least locating where the firefighter is. You know, Mark, I disagree with that people should have the ability just to leave, because I put that into the category of it's not rescue at all costs. Right? I don't want to lose anyone else in a fire. You know, if you look at back in Worcester, when they have comments like, you know, we've lost enough for the day. I don't want someone to give up their task to go in and do something, but even by just radioing back that they've heard a pass alarm or something is a big help. So I agree with the chief earlier about as long as they communicate, because as soon as they step out of our IMS, our accountability system, we don't know where they are. Why did the Mayday go in? Why is the firefighter in trouble? Is it a collapse? You don't know that sort of stuff. If it's medical, that's one thing. But I think just to start it off is the communication aspect. Because if nobody knows he's in trouble, no one's going to come and get him. So that's my 2 cents.
Good point. Thank you. Okay. Just now, again, I am a firm believer that, you got to make sure that people know what's going on in there. Communications, again, is the one failing part in any NIOSH report. However, if I have a window that's available, and we got to talk about flow paths and stuff like that too. So, but being aware of shutting the door, isolating, and then if I can get the person out, get on the radio and say, I'm getting them out this window. I'll get a ladder over there. Those are the things that, that's a rapid, and it's not so much freelancing, but at least you're doing something and you're moving forward and getting that person out. But again, how often we lose our focus, and as stress, as we keep on saying, without the training, stress takes over and we revert to habit. And if we're not training enough, that habit, we go to the window, we don't shut the door, we break the window, next thing you know, we're in a bad situation. So these are things that, again, I'm hoping we get some more interior rescue situations done, and maybe get that skill set built into what we, because it's one of those rapid things that has to be done. Anybody else wish to comment on that?
Door control is a big thing. For me, I was right in the flow path. Once they opened that window, the main floor door where we brought the line up to the second floor must have been still open. And it was like a blast furnace right on me trying to get out the window. So yeah, maybe it would have been a lot less if the door had been closed on the main floor.
Very good. Another thing that I see a lot of, and we went through a phase of fans, positive pressure attack fans and positive pressure ventilation. We do have a small group that think it's just an automatic and get it into the door, and next thing you know, we've got an issue like a big flow path problem. All right, and then we're catching up to not taking windows as we go by them, but we're still old Toronto, and we still have some old school it's that think that you go by a window, it makes it better. So if I'm trying to effect a rescue in there and I take a window, I really have to be recognized that I'm causing a flow path, and I don't want to make myself or get myself into trouble, but the firefighter's already compromised that we're bringing out. So Mark Vanderfeis.
Yeah, so let's build upon the points made by both Vince and Jeff in terms of the RIT team. When the RIT team is needed, they have to be aggressive, and they've got to be ready to go at a moment's notice, not just sitting there in rehab, so to speak, and kind of waiting, not prepared. So I think Vince, you mentioned one guys that want to have their face piece on, ready to go. So when the call's made for activation, they're ready to run essentially and get that job done and bring in the equipment that's going to be needed. So certainly, yeah, air is going to be the primary focus for the most part, besides water for defendable space. But we need that air supply and bring the proper tools needed to affect that rescue based upon what's going to take place. But the most important thing I want to stress is that RIT team has to be aggressive, and it cannot be the just a spot to fill in a check sheet for command that, okay, I got to get a RIT team established, and I'll pick these new guys, these new recruits that came off the recruit class or just come out of school, they'll be the RIT team. That's not who you want. You want the guys that are on this panel here or on this program right now that are aggressive, experienced, they have the knowledge, they know what they're doing, and they'll go, pardon the expression, balls to the walls to get the job done and get it done now when that call does come in. So that's who you want in that RIT team, and they've got to be ready to go at a moment's notice. And the RIT team's got to be situation aware. They got to be monitoring the radio channels and command board and the accountability board, see who's where, who's still inside, who's operating in what area, how long they've been there for how many minutes, 15, 20, 30, and keep tabs on that besides just relying upon what's being fed to them by the other sectors being set up. So they got a very participative role in the whole fire gun operation, not just there to be a luxury team to sit around, rest, and relax. They got a lot of work. They got proactive skills as far as getting the fire ground ready, putting ladders up, opening up some of the buildings, removing obstructions, doing a constant 360 because things do change all the time, monitoring radio channels, being aware what's going on, who's going in, who's coming out, that's very active. That's a very active station to be assigned to. So you got to have the right people. And again, the question I know we always teach this. I'm sure everybody here that teaches RIT will ask this question. If it's you, that is calling for a Mayday and you need help right now, who do you want coming to get you? So take a look around the room, or take a look around the hall of who you work with, or if it's a volunteer department, take a look around with who's in your department there as to who you want to come and get you. And you'll know pretty quickly who those people are and who you don't want to come and get you, because the ones who you don't want, they may be on the RIT team, and those are the wrong people to be on that team. You got to pick the right people, and you got to have the right attitude to go along with it. I think Paul Milton want to say something.
Oh yeah, Paul. Yep. Paul, you wanted to talk?
Guys, I'm trying to do 90 things here at home and listening to you guys, and I'm just getting fired up. I absolutely love what you guys are doing. Thank you so much to Dave Connors and Worley and Wiggins for including me on this, because literally I've got goosebumps. I love this conversation. Vince, thank you so much for sharing your story, but I would love to hear the whole, like right from start to finish on how that went down. I got a little bit of it here tonight. And I think it's so important for us, especially in the GTA, to be able to hear that coming from, a Canadian. Like a lot of the times we hear stuff from the States and maybe it gets lost in, thinking that it won't happen here. And Lionel, I think I remember you from the IAFF course, November 2 years ago. Your story too, just unbelievable. And I'm just kind of giving a little bit of cheap shout outs here, but I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing. And Jeff and Lionel, that IAFF course that you guys put on for us has really changed the way I think about training in RIT. And it's the IAFF trailer conference that whole week was just definitely changed the way we teach, which is great. But I'm just going to make one final point here, because I go on forever, is that what I'm a strong believer in, and what I'm trying to get built up in Oakville, is putting the officers in that first in crew under immense pressure in a training atmosphere. Okay, so we're blessed down in Oakville to have an amazing campus, amazing burn tower, and I think that something that's missing from our training is, these guys are lollygagging in onto the campus and kind of like, okay, we've got a first floor fire, and the guys know the burn tower a lot. But I think high pressure training, and I don't want to give too much away because I know my boys Daver and Worley are paying attention here, but I would love to be able to put pressure on those first in crews to start making those quick decisions under pressure. Like bringing in high school drama students. We used that long time ago at a major hazmat situation with Milton Fire, and it worked really well. Putting these guys under pressure like reality, making them have to think. It's like a muscle, right? And it's not being exercised enough for those officers to really make those under pressure decisions. And I think hopefully this fall we're going to do that in Oakville, and maybe we can report back some positive feedback. But anyways, guys, I'm just going to chime out here, or I'll talk for an hour. I love y'all. You're doing a great job. I could listen to this all night. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Paul brings up some good points. Yes, the training grounds become familiar, and this actually comes back to our standpipe discussions about getting out and being able to utilize. And it's something about we have to get with our management team in order that we can get use of these buildings, because the best learning that I've ever had has been when we've done hotels or we've done houses. It's been fantastic, breaching walls in a hotel and that kind of thing. It was good learning. And whereas we've got a great RIT tower, but it's become pretty much the same. We're lucky we've got 3 or 4 buildings we can use, but still, I do agree with ours does get a little high pressure the last day of our RIT program, which is good for most instructors. I see most of the problem is that the officer is trying to be the best that he can be, and peer pressure kind of gets to them, and they make some decisions that aren't working, and that's why we have to practice this. as you said, muscle memory. So again, back to RIT deployment. As you said, interior crews are roughly around 68% of the saves. The number for self-rescue is higher percentage than RIT rescue, but RIT deployment is only at 11%, all right? Not to say I'm not taking away the importance of a RIT team being established. You have to have it there for when the catastrophic events happen. And we're not dealing enough with structural collapse, and we're gonna be dealing a lot more in it, I think. We've had a few instances in Toronto with the newer construction and hoarding in basements and stuff like that. I've seen floors deflect 3 feet and not let go. All right. So there wasn't enough weight on it yet, but that floor was deflecting in the center that much. So that's where our RIT deployment is going to become really important. And structural collapse is something we don't really touch on for the RIT team. All right. And anybody want to talk on that?
Well, just a few points just in regards to RIT deployment, because the deployment numbers with Don got, and then compared to the actual RIT deployment with a grab, was only 6.6% out of 5,500 incidents. And so you're going to see that, and 1 in 8 of those RIT deployments had their own Mayday. So these are huge training things that we need to really hit of, are we training for failure for when things go sideways? Or like you mentioned, the complacency that comes with the same old drills, same knowing your or your buildings, going to that same spot. Like Paul brought up of crews just going in, lollygagging in, dragging the line, walking into the burn center because it's not hot. So all these things are training scars. And all these things get so used to it that all of a sudden you're standing up in a fire. You're not kicking the floor. And all these things start adding up.
No, very good point. Training scars. Yeah. Secondary egresses. So if you do have an interior Mayday happen and there's crews in there, do we have the ability to have, because we're lucky in Toronto, and I'm not sure, I know Winnipeg's pretty good too. We do have the staffing there that I can probably think about a secondary egress. And we always practice the hardest way, which I get, it's good to take a rope or a hose line, find your firefighter down, and then bring them out the same way. Not necessarily my favorite. If I can find another alternative, let's find the alternative. So interior crews, again, having that ability to find a window right away and or a door and get them out that way, or get crews to assist them. All right. So final words. I wanted to get Brent on earlier. Sorry about that. Brent was at 200 Wellesley where we had 3 Maydays, I think it was. And one RIT team brought the person, one of our people out. But the other 2 were just happenstance grabs. And some of it was outside our parameters, our SOGs too. However, it worked, all right? And that's, to me, that's almost freelancing, as Mark mentioned. And Brent can talk about it a bit more. Brent Brooks, a bit more on, you're late to the show, but talk a bit more about 200 Wellesley.
Did John already talk?
No, John never showed up. John Evans was one of the captains or crew on scene, and Johnny Evans was one that made the snag out of the elevator, I think. Is that not right?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So basically at Wellesley, I'll just tell John's story. When we're talking about risk and rescues and Maydays, John got separated from his crew, and this is prior to the Mayday, and he was coming down the hallway of the fire floor, and he was getting low on air, getting kind of to that dicey moment, and then he fell into an apartment on the same side as the fire. The door was fully open, no closures on it, and John said he took his face piece off and he just witnessed the smoke swirling by the hallway door. He was shocked and couldn't figure out why, multiple units were untenable on the fire floor, but yet he's in 2 units down from the actual fire and it's crystal clear and he had to come off air. So that was kind of his first experience with area refuge. The staging floor that was on 22, that had to be moved down to the 17th floor because of more than one fire, and the smoke had started to bank down. So even the staging, one of the district chiefs said, if we get a Mayday on 17, we won't be able to help our firefighters on 24. So the decision was made to go up to the 22nd floor, force open a door, and actually run the staging from a dirty hallway. Unbeknownst to us, there was actually a mother and her daughter inside the apartment. They were happy to see us, gave us water to drink, but we actually ran staging from their apartment. When the Mayday came in, the RIT team was one floor below, we were 2 floors below, and they were able to go up and grab the firefighter that called the Mayday. The firefighter did give the incorrect floor. He gave the staging floor, not the fire floor. But the district chief was able to run the hallway really quick and determine that he wasn't on the staging floor. He was actually on the fire floor. And the one good thing about when the firefighter called the Mayday was that he did give his location, and it was by the elevator. The important part about his location, because he said it was by the elevator, the RIT team normally would have went and started searching from the fire back. They actually turned away from the fire and found him at the elevators. So they were successful with the Mayday. The other firefighter was actually the first firefighter out, came down that stairwell to the 22nd floor and ran into us. He had his face piece off and his face was soot covered, and he couldn't tell us what had happened, and he was in distress himself. That's when we kind of first started thinking that we actually have a Mayday. So one self-rescued, one was rescued by the RIT team, and then John, who's not here, they took the elevator to the fire floor. The doors opened up, and the captain was laying right in front of the doors. John was able to reach out, pull the firefighter in. The hallway and the elevator was fully charged with smoke, but they couldn't see. So they just started hitting the elevator buttons. They wound up in the basement, unable to see. They had actually shared a face piece with the downed firefighter and himself. They got back in the elevator, went back up to lobby, and then finally got the captain some medical attention. That's it, kind of in a nutshell.
So yeah, that's touches on all three: self-rescue, an actual lucky situation with the elevator, and it's something that we don't want to condone, but in this one, it turned out really well. All right, but
Yeah,
those systems can break down so quickly with any kind of water or any kind of elevators are finicky in an everyday use. So when we get to a fire, it's very important that, however, in this case, it did work. All right, and then the RIT team did manage to do their job, and we got somebody out that way. And that's why it was important. We brought up 200 Wellesley. It's kind of one of those ones where things compounded, like we talked about before, how we get into trouble. It compounded, and it was just a bunch of things that came together. So,
and we now have a training note because of that. We actually talk about area refuge and forcing a door on either side of the fire department. So if we do need to bail, we don't need a door count. It's the first door we come to on the same side as the fire, and we're into our area refuge.
Very good. And Brent, we were just starting to summarize when you came on, so short and sweet.
Mom's birthday.
That's fine. Hey, that's good. I'm glad you're here. Anyway, in summary, I'd like to go ahead, Brent, summarize your experience, and away we go.
Yeah, so I just say, as any firefighter, no matter what task you're doing inside a building, residential, high-rise, even if you're at a car wreck on the highway, think of where your area of refuge is. What if something goes bad right now? What am I going to do, and where am I going to go? If you're going on top of a roof of a house, if things start going bad, where am I going? What am I doing? Regardless if you're on air or not on air, always be thinking, what is the next step when something goes wrong? That's my take.
Any summary, Lionel?
It was great to hear from Brent there. It really brings up a lot of the key points that things that went wrong with our incident. Simple things as closing a door for an area of refuge and knowing a plan or having a plan before you get in there. You know what I mean? Like you just brought up, Mike, no matter what it is on a roof or wherever it is, if you have a situational awareness or a condition recognition of what am I going to do next, having a plan is huge. Don Abbott talks a lot about it within his program. He can see the training that's evolved throughout North America, that he's seen that these things that we are doing are having an effect. All these Project Mayday incidents are not just negative ones. You know, like I love when we talked to Vince, that his was a positive, like how those guys got through. They put the Mayday out as a third party. They reached through and pulled them out and worked through it and got them out of that hole, you know, things like that. So I really enjoyed this whole discussion, because this discussion needs to broaden right across Canada. We have so much in the States. They have so many resources from grants that we don't get, but this is how we're going to get it out, by spreading the word, making this group bigger. And like I see the chat, getting a Canadian NIOSH. Like, it doesn't have to be federally funded, but it does need people to start it. So thank you for this opportunity. This is a great discussion. I can't wait to go to work tomorrow night, because the crews know what we're going to be doing. So this is great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Lionel. All right. Vince, any parting shots?
Not really, but I'm just really happy to be a part of this. Yeah, just to hear their experience, and yeah, it's been really, really good.
Thanks, Vince. Some of the Hogtown Fool guys, Matt, Worley.
First of all, Lionel, Vince, thank you for sharing tonight. Thanks for sharing your story so that we can all learn. We can all start to talk about this. I'm going to summarize Mark Vanderfy's point in case he doesn't, about being the best guy on the fire scene as the RIT crew. You not only have to be the best, most aggressive, fastest, but you need to know every single tool in that RIT cache better than anybody else in the fireground. So if that's something we can stress, then that's maybe how we should be looking at RIT training. It's not only just doing the RIT drills, but it's doing chainsaw work, it's doing airbag work, it's doing cribbing work, it's doing all that sort of work so that you can be that best guy on that whole fire scene.
Thanks, Matt. Matt Baca.
Same as Matt World, Lionel, Vince. Thanks very much for sharing your stories. Honestly, learned a lot by listening to it. Kind of the build too is like Matt said, you want to be the best firefighters. Touching back on gear so you don't put yourself in a situation. Learn the limitations of your gear, melting points of your face shields, your visors, how to feel the heat. Like, go out and play with things so you can feel the heat in the back of your gloves or from your hand, just to know how deep you are before it's too late.
Good, thank you. And Rob Wiggins.
Yeah, I just want to thank Vince and Lionel. Lionel, my wife's a North End Winnipeg girl, and I got a bunch of buddies out there, so it's great talking to you and hearing your story. Stay safe. Just going to piggyback on a couple things. We've been talking about hose line versus rope line. Definitely, I would say, if we want to discuss stuff at the table tomorrow, look into it. Do you have a hose line stage with your RIT? I don't see it often. What if that crew lost water and that's what's needing their rescue? So something to think about. And just Vince brought up one good point that struck a kind of light bulb with me. He said, nobody wants to be on RIT. And that is, if we're going back to point one on what we do wrong, that is what we're doing wrong right off the get-go. And just like Mark and Willie said, those have got to be your gladiators, and take it as an honor that the IC has put you as the rescue unit for your brothers and sisters on the fireground. Thank you, Mike and Mark, for having me again, and love you guys. Take it easy.
Thank you. Mark Vanderfeist, finish up.
Sure thing. Just want to say thanks to everybody tonight for participating and being involved in this. This has been a great discussion, and hopefully when this goes out and people are watching this may spur more conversation, more discussion for the weeks and months to follow, and hopefully may cause some to think about what they need to do themselves to be not just a RIT firefighter, but just to be a firefighter, period, and to be the best at what they can do in terms of their craft and at the top of their game. There's a kind of a term we're kind of coining here. It's called the tactical firefighter. And that's what we want to be. We want to be a hands-on tactical firefighter, thinking, always developing, always improving ourselves, seeking out those opportunities to sharpen our skill sets, both theoretically and practically all the time. So that when the time comes that we are assigned, in this case, the RIT team, or to be on RIT, or to be involved in some kind of a RIT rescue operation, we're ready. We're ready individually, both mentally, physically, and emotionally to take care and to do this without fail. So I'm hoping that's going to be the case for us going forward, that we can kind of spurn this a little bit. And it starts with small talk, small discussions. And from there, the little snowball becomes bigger, and hopefully things will evolve at that point. So again, thanks to all those tonight for participating. It was wonderful to be a part of this. Again, thank you, Lionel and Vince, for your contribution with your real life events. Good seeing you again, Lionel. Hope to see you sometime this year coming up soon, out your way, and we'll get to have a little beer at that point in time and share some more stories at that point when it does happen. But do the best you can, everybody. Be that tactical firefighter.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, just to finish off, thanks to all the panelists. Appreciate all that you put into this. Lionel and Vince, really appreciate you relating your stories, because these are learning for us. And lots of people talk about it, but getting it firsthand is huge. Just to recap, imperative that we learned, we stress 75% of all our fire gun operations are prevention, not to get into trouble, and 25% on how to get out of it. All right. And just keep training, because that's what I think is going to get more and more of our firefighters hurt, and hopefully not the other thing, but train. All right. We want to be, as Mark said, tactical firefighters. And in this case here, I'm pretty proud of my station. We have Fridays as our RIT day. Every Friday is a RIT day. And we do some kind of a RIT scenario, and either self-rescue or something like that. Anyway, thank you very much. I will be parsing this together, and hopefully we'll have it out tomorrow night. Okay? All right? Bye. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Talk to you later. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.